How you doing? I'm Kevin O'Hara for alcoholmastery.com. Today I wanted to talk about everything in moderation. Is it a myth, or is there some basis of truth behind it? I think as with most things like this, there is sort of a bit of both. Mostly it's myth. It's something that we use to excuse our indulgences. It's something that, there's no real definition behind it. So what exactly is moderation? I mean, with alcohol, there's a lot of different definitions, right? So, some people will say, well, it's one drink a night. Another group of people will say it's a couple of drinks a night. A third group of people will say it's a unit of alcohol a day. Second group will say it's 2 or 3 units, right? So the problem is that when you're in the midst of drinking, you can make up your own definitions, right? Or you can choose the definition which suits you in the moment, right? If you're not really into drinking at that time, if you're not in the form of it, it's easy to go, no, well, I have to stick to this moderate amount of alcohol that I'm consuming, and I've got to the edge of that, and I'm not going to drink anymore. Whereas if you're having a good time, it's easy to say, well, I've heard somewhere that it's 3 drinks. 3 drinks could be anything. It could be 3 triple scotches, and we can always rationalize in our own minds at that time. We're a world of drug consumers, right? There's the drugs of the legal drugs of alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, sugar, and there's a whole host of different so-called illegal drugs out there, and they all have one thing in common, and that's to give us some form of pleasure or to satisfy a craving, to meet an unmet need in ourselves, right? And often a drug is the quickest way of doing that. It's not the safest way, it's not the best way by any stretch of the imagination, but it's quick. It gets to the core of the issue very, very fast. Throughout the Western world, moderation is perceived as being acceptable. It's perceived as being okay to be moderate. Most cases it's perceived as, everything in moderation is the best way to go, right? It's the way that's going to give you sort of the balanced life. That's what we're all looking for. It's not going to give you any harm. And in most cases that's complete bullshit, because you have to look at moderation in a few different ways. For a start, you have to take the individual drug, right? Alcohol, for instance, cigarettes, these are all drugs of dependence, right? They're same as caffeine. They are they produce tolerance, so the more you take of these substances, the more you need in order to get to the same level again, right? So from that perspective, moderation is a very dodgy area, because if you moderate, you're eventually going to hit a ceiling where the drug doesn't work anymore, right? It's not giving you any buzz. And what do you do then? You either stop and wait for the levels of tolerance to die, or you increase the dosage in order to get the same level. And because of cravings, because the drug has a lot of cravings with it and gives you a lot of cravings, the idea of stopping, now the easiest thing to do is to just increase the dosage. The idea of stopping is probably, we think about it, but the reason why we're taking a drug in the first place is because we want to look for the magic pill, right? We want to get to the desired result as quickly as possible, and in often cases it's the desired result that we've taught ourselves to achieve, right? You know, we've had since day dot, you know, this is what's in our mind, you know, the way we do this, the way we relax it, is to smoke and drink. The way we eat is to go down to the local shop, buy processed foods, plenty of sugar in them, get up in the morning and have your daily dose of wake me up in the form of caffeine, whether it's tea or coffee. In the evening you have your daily dose of alcohol to relax you and knock you out. And this is just the way that we're brought up. You know, I like to talk about the similarities between heroin and alcohol, and people often think that they're on two polar opposites of the scale. You know, and if there was a scale, and there were polar opposites on this scale, then alcohol would be on the top and heroin would be lower down, because alcohol is a lot more harmful than heroin, right? But we don't look at it like that. You know, heroin is something that we are told to sort of get away from at all costs, to avoid at all costs, and alcohol is something that we're encouraged to do from day one, right? You know, if heroin were legal, right, if all of a sudden the government decided, well, look, this war on drugs that we're fighting is not working. How do we solve this? We go with countries like Holland and Portugal and Spain, and we make everything legal for personal possession, right? So you can take these drugs, but it's the dealing of the drugs which is illegal, right? That's the next step. So what's the next step after that? You know, the next step is maybe to legalize the manufacture of these drugs and the distribution of these drugs, you know, because at the end of the day, it's more tax dollars, and that's what the government seem to care about more than anything else. If they can outweigh the tax dollars coming in with the tax dollars that are going out in the form of the cost, you know, the health cost, the cost of what's going on in the streets and policing and all that kind of stuff, then, you know, why not? You know, it's all revenue at the end of the day. So, you know, what would be the moderate message then, you know? That the proper way to take heroin is to moderate it, right? So, you know, how would you moderate a drug like that? How would you even think about starting to moderate a drug like that? I'm sure there are more brainier people than me who could work it out and who could make it possible, you know? You know, these drugs are addicting. They are certainly make people dependent on them. You know, how many people in the morning get up and they can't function without their cup of coffee? How many people come home at night and they can't relax or they can't sleep without their drop of wine or glass of whiskey or their couple of cans of beer? You know I was certainly in that block, both ends of the scale, and one fed the other. You know, one getting up in the morning without with a dirty hangover, without the cup of coffee was impossible. And then, you know, have 2 or 3 cups of coffee during the day. I'd be hyper during the day, and then in the evening time, I wouldn't be able to sleep without my drop of alcohol. I went to my sister's wedding tasting the other day, and they brought out a load of delicious food, lovely food that they brought out, and at the end of it they brought out an iced coffee. So the coffee machine was broken, so they brought out this iced coffee, and it was a small little cup of coffee like this in a little glass, and it was like a slush puppy, and it was made out of coffee, and it very sweet. And I don't drink coffee, but I thought, yeah, dessert and stuff, I'll have some of this, and I only drank half of it, and I managed to go to sleep. But 2 hours later I was wide awake, and there was no chance I was getting back to sleep again. I went to sleep at just after 10, and I was awake at 12:30, and that was it for the night. I was knackered on Monday, just didn't get any sleep at all, and I could still feel the coffee going through me in the morning. And that's just the effect of something that I don't do anymore. You know, I used to do it, as I said. I drink very strong coffee when I was drinking it, and I drink 3 or 4 cups of coffee in the morning just to overcome the hangover, you know. So, you know, these are drugs, and they're drugs that, you know, we talk about moderation in the sense of that it's an isolated thing, right? So, you know, moderation in alcohol is good, right? So you drink 1 or 2 drops of alcohol in the evening, whatever it is that your moderation, idea of moderation, whatever that dictates for you, right? You drink 1 or 2 of these things, and then you think that that's all right, right? But then you have to consider in the moderation that you talk about in coffee, the moderation that you talk about in any other drug that you're taking. Maybe you take an aspirin or something like that in the afternoon. Whatever else you take, and think about the food that you're taking. You know, a moderate amount of cheeseburger. We say if you have 1 cheeseburger a week, but you also have a lot of other processed foods, you know, these are all moderation in an individual things, but that mount up together into one big, you know, it's just a moderation nightmare. You know, so, you know, the fact that we say moderation in everything, right, or everything in moderation, you know, it's bullshit. There are some things in this world that if you even take in moderate amounts, they're lethal, right? You know, think about somebody who's got an allergy to peanuts, or an allergy to some other food, you know, somebody who's got sensitization to milk or bread or all those kind of things, you know. Moderation in those circumstances are going to cause immediate reactions. And a lot of the time it's because we don't get these immediate reactions that we sort of think this through, and we rationalize this, and we go, well, moderation is not too bad. Moderation in the moment, right? As I've said all along, you know, this is not, I'm not against alcohol in general, right, per se. I'm against the way we use alcohol in our society, right? We use alcohol on a day-to-day basis. When, you know, if we used it in a ceremonial thing, if we drank alcohol once a month, or if we drank alcohol at weddings, or if we drank alcohol, you know, at your birthday or something like that, then, you know, there's no real harm to that. There's going to be no long-term harm to that. But because we use it in such a daily fashion, right, in such, you know, we want to live like kings. This is, you know, our lifestyle now is, the only people in the past that lived this lifestyle were the kings and queens, and they all suffered the same diseases that we're suffering today, and it's all because of what we're putting into our mouths. So you have to think about moderation in terms of how you rationalize it in your own mind, you know. To me, abstinence is a word that I hate, right? You know, because it just goes back to it's all that word of sobriety and teetotaler and all that kind of stuff, right? For me, just not putting this shit into my body, right? This is something that I've learned in the past 3.5 years, was what I put into my body, what the inside of my body looks like, is much more important than what the outside of my body looks like, right? It's the same as you can have a car that is all dolled up in the outside, and you lift the hood and the engine looks like a piece of shit because the guy hasn't looked after it, right? He hasn't changed the oil regularly, he hasn't changed the filters, he hasn't changed the spark plugs, he hasn't done all the jobs that you should do in order to regularly maintain the body. So underneath and inside that engine just looks like a piece of crap, right? That's what most people treat their bodies like, right? They put stuff into their mouths, and once the stuff has gone in and gone past the taste buds, they forget about it, right? Once the feeling of the drug that they've taken has worn off, they forget about it, right? And they don't take any notice of the underlying consequences of what all this stuff is doing to them, right? So moderation to me is bullshit, right? It's just something that we use in order to justify what we're doing to ourselves, right? So always try and think about the inside of your body first, right? It doesn't make any difference what you look like on the outside, you know. People will spend thousands and thousands and thousands on plastic surgery to make their faces go, they'll spend thousands on boob jobs or dick jobs, or, you know, to make these things look bigger and better and whatever, you know. And they'll pay no attention to what's going on the inside. You know, you see people in gyms every day of the week, right, pumping up and looking at themselves in the mirror and marveling at how fantastic they look. And then you'll see the same guys, the same women in the bars at night, filling themselves with a toxic poison, not giving a shit what's going on the inside, right? That's what my message is all about, is take more care of what's going on the inside than what's going on the outside. You can't see the inside, so you have to be careful about what you put in there, because everything that you see on the outside, what you put in through on the outside, this is what you have to educate yourself about, and what the fuck that's doing to you inside, what it's doing to your insides, and what it's doing to the quantity of your life, how long you're going to live, but more importantly, what it's going to do to the eventual quality of your life. All right, so look, that's it for today. I'm going to carry on my walk now. Until next time, stay safe, keep the alcohol out your mouth, keep all the other shit out your mouth as well. Just be careful about what you put in there. Everything that you put in there has got a consequence, whether a good consequence or a bad consequence. It's up to you, man. It's up to you. Until next time, I'm Kevin O'Hara for Alcohol Mastery. Onwards and upwards. Take care.